Okay, so we're going to be talking about the scapula and the rotator cuff muscles, the palpation of them, and the muscles situated. So here are the rotator cuff muscles, the six muscles: supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, and subscapularis. So in this, I'm going to locate the scapula, and the go-to landmark for the scapula that I go and find usually is the spine of the scapula. Probably the easiest one to feel, palpate. Um, Hard to find sometimes, depending on the size of the body that you're working on. But usually I'll find that spine of the scapula. So I can kind of go from the spine of the scapula and then find my other landmarks based on that. I'm going all the way down here to the inferior angle, feeling the axillary border or the lateral border, and coming all the way up, getting a general idea where the supraspinatus is. Then I can predict, well, right there is the clavicle. So there's the acromioclavicular joint, the AC joint. Then I can kind of predict where the supraspinatus is going to be located and the superior angle. That's what I'm feeling there. As superior angle coming all the way up. And then coming across. Now understand this too, and I think you might understand this. I'm doing a two-dimensional drawing on a three-dimensional canvas. So perspective might be off, generally speaking, but that's what makes it a little bit more challenging. So right now I'm drawing in the fibers of the infraspinatus, and the fibers that will come attached to the inferior border of the spine of the scapula, they're going to be more vertical than the other fibers. They kind of join together here, kind of in a convergent pattern. So here is the majority of the fibers of the infraspinatus. So you can generally see if I'm doing gliding a double thumb glide with the fibers of the infraspinatus where I should be standing with the arm in this position, the scapula in this position. And then if I want to do cross fiber friction on the fibers, a majority of the fibers anyway, where I should be standing for that. So there is the convergence, but a lot of them are going to fan out and come to, again, converging onto the greater tubercle of the humerus. Some of the fibers here, again, I'll address this as well, right at that inferior border of the spine of the scapula with cross fiber friction. And that cross fiber friction is going to be in east and west direction. When I say east and west, if you can imagine the person's head is north, feet are south, east and west. So there's the remainder of the fibers. Now from the supraspinous fossa is going to be the supraspinatus muscle. And the same thing with the fibers there. They're going to come out. They're going to use the acromioclavicular joint as a bridge. They dive deep to that and then come down and attach once again to the greater tubercle of the humerus. Three of the four rotator cuff muscles attach to the greater tubercle of the humerus, the subscapularis being the only one that attaches to the lesser tubercle of the humerus. So here are the fibers, and again, then you can predict where you're going to stand for cross fiber friction, a stimulating stroke, and longitudinal friction. So here I'm trying to distinguish between the teres major and the minor. There's the minor, the upper axillary border of the scapula, again converging with the infraspinatus, and again to the greater tubercle of the humerus. So I can continue on with the axillary border, though I kind of don't feel it much anymore because the posterior head of the deltoid is going to cover that up there. And now I can predict and feel, palpate where the teres major will come out. Now, the teres major is a medial rotator of the humerus, and the teres minor is a lateral rotator of the humerus. So if you can have your person do those actions when they're on the table, you can feel the difference that separates the major and the minor. Here I'm filling in the fibers for the rhomboids major and minor. Now they're going to go from the root of the spine to the scapula. So right where that spine of the scapula meets with the vertebral border of the scapula, that's the root of the spine of the scapula. Here I'm drawing the fibers because everything superior to that is the levator scapula. On the scapula we're talking about. So everything superior to that is the levator scapula. At the root of the spine and inferior are all of the rhomboids major and minor, C7 to T5, spinous processes. So there is your 3 of the 4 rotator cuff muscles, supra, infra, and teres minor. And then the associated muscles, teres major, rhomboids, levator scapula. So on this portion here, I'm going to, through palpation, determine where the musculature is. You saw how the fibers lie on the previous illustration. So this is finding them without any type of sense other than your palpation sense. So again, the landmark that I'm going to go to palpate is going to be the spine of the scapula. If you can determine at the end of the shoulder where the deltoid is in those areas, then you can determine where that scapula is going to lie. I always tell anybody, any therapist, when you're looking for, and I say looking, what I mean is palpating. When you're looking for those landmarks, close your eyes, get to a basic area, your ground zero, and then close your eyes and start feeling. Because I don't know how many times where I've been palpating, looking for the spine of the scapula, because I'm looking, not trying to palpate. I'm looking instead of palpating. Close your eyes. Be in the general area, so you know you're going to start where you should be palpating, right? And then close your eyes. So all of this, I'm finding all of these landmarks here. There's the inferior angle of the scapula where my thumb is. It's hard to see right there where now my right thumb is. So that's the inferior angle. Right about where my index finger is about where the root of the spine of the scapula. When I say root, it's R-O-O-T, the root of the spine of the scapula. Some people say I pronounced that funny, so I wanted to spell out what I'm actually saying. Here is the supraspinatus. So what I'm feeling is that superior border of the spine of the scapula, and then this indentation. That indentation is going to be the supraspinatus, right? Now understand, you're palpating through the most superficial upper trapezius. So there's the upper trap. I kind of grab that between my fingers and thumbs. And then right from the spine, if I go superior, slight indentation, I know I'm going to be on the supraspinatus. So when you're working this area, as you know, on a lot of people, your intention is to work the supraspinatus, but you may get referral points for the upper trapezius. Typically, the supraspinatus is not going to refer up into the back of the head at the occiput. It's typically going to refer down the arm, distally down the arm. So I'm trying to locate that. So now I go down to the there's the posterior head of the deltoid I just pointed out. There's the infraspinatus. So I have a small section where it's just infraspinatus is the most superficial muscle when I'm working or palpating this area. I'm on his posterior head of the deltoid. So there I can feel my thumb is at the inferior angle again, feeling that inferior angle. And by the way, you can do this completely blindfolded. Close your eyes and just go through and count out all of your landmarks, all of the landmarks that are of the scapula, the inferior angle spine, the vertebral border. Once you locate one, it's real easy then to predict where the others are going to be located. So right there, what I'm determining is the difference again between that teres major and the minor. So I can feel. Now up in higher or more superior in the axillary region, you're going to run across the third head of the deltoid. The third head of the triceps brachii. Some people get confused and think that's the teres minor attachment, but typically this, the way it feels, it's going to be a tighter. You're actually at the musculotendinous junction of that third head of the tricep. So it feels like a really tight, could be a teres minor. And reality is, it is the third head of the triceps brachii that attaches to the infraglenoid tubercle of the scapula. So what I'm palpating here now is the tendons for the supraspinatus and infraspinatus at the greater tubercle. So again, what I'm talking about here is how easy it is to palpate the area. Close your eyes, take your eyes out of this, and then you can really start understanding the nomenclature of the shoulder girdle. All right. So for this now, what I'm going to do is going to some stretching. Now, again, because of the rotator cuff muscles, they have a lot of jobs that they do, right? But we know their primary muscle contraction. For example, the infraspinatus is going to create external or lateral rotation of the humerus, along with the teres minor being synergistic. And the subscapular is going to be internal or medial rotation of the humerus. So quite simply, if you're going to stretch these muscles, again, the key to stretching, know the origin, the insertion, and the action of the muscle, and then perform the opposite action to stretch the muscle. So for example, I want to explain this now. So for example, if you have the infraspinatus, which is an external rotator or lateral rotator of the humerus, then you want to do internal rotation to stretch the infraspinatus and the teres minor. So we'll continue on with this video now. So what I'm going to do, I want to situate Chuck here that I'm going to use the edge of his elbow at the edge of the table. My left hand, it's not just resting there. I'm stabilizing that glenohumeral joint, stabilizing the joint. So as soon as I roll it into an internal or external rotation, I'm pushing down. In this particular case now, with my right hand, pushing down and stabilizing that glenohumeral joint, because as soon as you want to rotate it, the joint wants to pop up into this position here, kind of an anterior protraction. So the same thing with what I'm creating here is internal rotation. So I'm stretching the infraspinatus and the teres minor. I'm doing two types of stretching. One is active isolated stretching. Active isolated stretching is really good to use on, generally speaking, on anybody, but especially when the therapist is smaller in stature than the client, because the client is really doing all of the work with active isolated stretching. The introduction, and you can see these and take, I took a active isolated stretching class from Aaron Mattis himself. And he talked about the principles of active isolated stretching. And so I practice those. I do use a lot of different methods, from basic gravity stretching to a dynamic stretching, which is going to be getting the client involved with active isolated stretching, or with PNF, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. What I'm going to do here now is stretch the supraspinatus. So I do a little chicken wing. See how Chuck's hand is on his hip? So I keep that about the crest of the ilium, stabilize the shoulder joint with the left hand, and then bring the elbow towards the therapist. Stabilize the joint, bring it towards you. Yep. If I do an active isolated stretching, Chuck is doing the work. I'm just taking it to that point where he stops, take it slightly past it, and do 10 repetitions of that to stretch. So again, a lot of times after I'm done with this neuromuscular work, or any type of work that I'm doing, connective tissue work, I want to give the muscle the new proprioceptive awareness. In other words, this is where you can go now. And I'm showing the muscle where it can stretch to, because of postural or any type of dysfunction, even injury dysfunction.